When Caleb Williams was selected first overall in the 2024 NFL draft, it was to no one's surprise. No one really was surprised by the fact that the Bears found their franchise guy, supposedly, in Caleb Williams. Now, if we think about this from an average fan perspective, we see as Williams is a pretty good quarterback. He's a guy that led the USC to some decent seasons, won the Heisman, of course, during his first season at USC. But we need to know a little bit more about this quarterback. And what I mean by that is talk about the good, the bad, and the semi ugly. And you're probably thinking, where's my co host, Brian? Here's the thing. Here at the Third and 10 podcast, we like to do different things, to try different things out. And I met this man a few months ago, and he is a phenomenal guy. He is someone with a lot of knowledge about the game of football. So we came up with the idea called Coach's Corner. Coach's Corner is a segment every Thursday. It will be recorded and posted to the public on Friday, where this man will come join me to talk about the football world from a unique perspective, a more in depth perspective, something that you don't get anywhere else. And this is the first episode of Coach's Corner, where we discuss Caleb Williams and what to expect from him this upcoming season and the future beyond. So, without further ado, let me introduce my guy. He's someone I respect a lot dearly. He's been great. He was a previous guest in a previous episode, and I'm glad he's joining me today, not just for today, but for the foreseeable future. Ladies and gentlemen, Coach Wilson is now in the building with his little button up, looking good. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Nate. Taking me back to the days when I was roaming the sidelines a little bit. I used to always like buttoning up pretty well, looking like I'm in a position of authority, not just your average coach in a crew neck sweatshirt. But no, I am really excited to not only discuss this topic of Caleb Williams, which I'm enamored by his skill set and the situation that he's stepping into with the Bears. I just love the fact that I have a platform to talk ball. I love the passion that you possess for the game, the knowledge that you have. You always ask very thought-provoking questions. And I believe that is the foundation for us to have a really strong dialogue. So I am really happy to be here, man. And let's rock and roll and get into this thing.
Yes, sir. Let's do it, Coach. All right. So first off, for those of you who don't know, let's start with Caleb Williams. Let's talk about the basic information, right? He's a 22-year-old quarterback right now. He was born on November 18th, 2001. He's a 6'1 quarterback. He went to, well, we'll get to the school stuff in just a bit, but he's a 6'1 guy, 215 pounds, and he was born in Washington, D.C. So that's just the basic stuff. We want to get that out of the way. So be it. But see, Coach Wilson here, guys, is not just here to talk about, oh, Caleb Williams is going to be an excellent quarterback in the NFL or vice versa. We want to know, Coach, from you, and of course, I'll add in some stuff here and there, Coach. Let's start from the beginning. Let's start from high school, per se, and then work our way to college and whatnot. For those of you who don't know, Caleb Williams did go to 2 universities, but we'll get to that in just a bit. So, Coach, let's get started with the high school stuff, right? Or wherever you want to start, per se.
Yeah. Well,
what do we
let's
need to
start
know?
with the family. Let's start with the family. I got to tap into his DNA a little bit. I got to know about his upbringing and his background. Okay. He came from a lot of stability. And that's what I really like about him. His dad's an entrepreneur into a lot of different ventures in commercial real estate in the DC area. And his mom is a nail technician. That is why he did the whole nails thing. Okay. It wasn't like it was an idea that came out of nowhere. He had a very, very strong relationship with his mom and wanted to experiment on himself. And I believe that the first time he put something on his nails in the game in which it got notoriety was like a FU to some team. I forget who it was that they were playing. It was a derogatory remark on his nails to an opponent. However, that has obviously become a trend upon that generation. And so I like to define Caleb Williams as like the first Gen Z quarterback, if you will. Quite comparable to like LaMelo Ball. And he's just really different in the basketball world. And I feel like people don't really know how to wrap their head around it because Gen Z is now coming of age, in which, like, for all their quirkiness and the things that they're into, it's like, well, now they're the leader of a team, if you will. So that's why I think there is this polarizing feel with Caleb Williams. But I also wanted to note that he comes from stability, okay? And he has two strong-minded parents, and he's also an only child. I'm an only child. I've studied the mindset of only children quite a bit. And so the fact that he has security and stability within his parents, his dad actually invested in an Athletic Republic, which is a sports complex. It's like it's a sports performance center. It's a franchise in which Caleb Williams is essentially a lab rat. He was a receiver, running back type, and he was really young and then lost the game. And he always took losses really hard and was crying. He's like, I'm never going to not be in control of the outcome again. I want to be a quarterback. And his dad was like, all right, have at it. And so that's why he started playing quarterback, because he wanted to control the game. As an only child, you like to control things. You beat to your own drum. So I think that's really what drives this guy's DNA. When I look at Caleb Williams, I see a winner. Okay, I see a tremendous level of self-belief. I know that he's willing to put the work in. I know he's a really intelligent kid. He went to Gonzaga College High School, which is a prestigious school, okay? 100% of the student body go on to college, okay?
No way.
Very unique fact about that school. However, I will say what stood out to me in watching his high school film is that not every school he played had like really big athletic kids. You can definitely tell that there's some private school kids there. However, he's a born quarterback to me from his mindset, and he throws the ball really naturally. But, let's talk about his career a little bit at the high school level. Freshman year, played a little bit of varsity. Sophomore year, he's the full-on starter. He wins Maryland State Player, the Gatorade State Player of the Year. They go on to win the state championship. And I have here, I believe I have his numbers for you as well. His junior year, he had 37 total touchdowns. And he was just dominant, especially as a runner. There was a lot of designed runs. Then going into his junior year, again, they were dominant. I don't believe they won the state championship, but he has an incredibly remarkable highlight film. And then he lost his senior year to COVID. They didn't even play football at all in that DC area. But I did want to note that he was the 8th overall prospect in the class of 2021, the 2nd overall quarterback. He was a 5-star quarterback, so his success in college came to no surprise. He was definitely projected to be that. Now, what I found fascinating in evaluating him is that he had offers from everywhere. I believe Penn State, they really had their eyes on him early. But he went to Oklahoma, and he wasn't afraid to compete with Spencer Rattler at all. And Spencer Rattler was on that Netflix show, and Spencer Rattler was kind of deemed like the next great one by a lot of people. So I just love the fact that this kid said, okay, Spencer Rattler's over there, big deal. I'm going to go there and compete. And then the day his whole life changed was his redshirt freshman year when they were down 35-17 at halftime. Lincoln Riley took a leap of faith and said, Spencer Rattler, get out of here. Caleb Williams, go in. And Caleb Williams leads them to a comeback, and the legend of Caleb Williams is born. They play musical chairs a little bit. Spencer Rattler would go back in from time to time, but that was Caleb Williams' team, undoubtedly. So when Lincoln Riley left the next year and he went to SC, he got his quarterback, and that was like the continuum of Lincoln Riley just being this quarterback whisperer from Baker Mayfield to Jalen Hurts to Kyler Murray. Next comes Caleb Williams. And I will say that Baker Mayfield on that list is probably the only pure thrower of the football that's probably a little better than Caleb Williams, but Caleb Williams has that improv dynamic. And again, like, he could throw off platform, strong runner, muscular built, in supreme confidence, in which I like Caleb Williams even more as a prospect than Baker Mayfield. But the last thing I want to say is this about Caleb Williams, and I think that this leads to a lot of the polarization behind him. He won the Heisman Trophy as an underclassman, in which there's only been 4 other guys that have done that. Correct me if I'm wrong if I missed a guy. But Tim Tebow won the Heisman and went back to school. Johnny Manziel won the Heisman and went back to school. Jameis Winston won the Heisman and went back to school. And Lamar Jackson won the Heisman and went back to school. That automatically puts a lot of spotlight on you because you got to go back being already immortalized. So I would say that already draws a lot of, just eyes on Caleb Williams, making it really difficult for him to really build his stock up, in which you're just going to ridicule the kid. So that's my initial overview of how I see Caleb Williams as a whole, really putting a stoplight going into his redshirt junior year at SC. What are your thoughts, Nate?
Yeah, I think I have an add-on question, Coach, if you don't mind, because
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
mentioned, Lincoln Riley going from Oklahoma to USC and bringing his quarterback along with him. And I think for me, as well as others as well, how important is that for Riley to get his quarterback from his previous school? Because, that coach quarterback relationship is pretty important, no?
100%. I honestly didn't know why Lincoln Riley took that job. I mean, obviously living in Southern California trumps living in Norman, Oklahoma,
Yeah.
undoubtedly. But I think that they're of a similar tier in school, and Oklahoma has definitely been better over the last decade. However, I would imagine that between the boosters and, waking up that SC program where it has the potential to be, why Lincoln Riley would even go there. And I'm sure he figured I can probably, if not get Caleb to come with me, I can go pluck a quarterback from another school, especially with the transfer rules having changed at that period of time. But Caleb Williams, who was still sort of an unknown and did have some lows in his redshirt freshman year, I bet Caleb was like, I might have to come back here and compete with Spencer Rattler. That was before Spencer went on to transfer to South Carolina. And so it just seemed like a natural move. But I feel like Lincoln Riley could definitely look at the landscape of college football, and it's a very easy sell for a guy like him. I believe Lincoln Riley is one of the best football coaches on the planet. And so it's just like, you could come into my system, make quick decisions, play with some pretty athletic kids. And if you want to be a first-round pick at the quarterback position, I have the recipe to get you there. But I don't know if Lincoln Riley has some success, because I believe they won about 11 games his first year there. They don't play a
Hmm.
lick of defense. But just no different than Oklahoma. But the
Yeah.
fact that he's able to get that quarterback, I would say that is absolutely everything, which they have USC trending in the right direction. He also was able to get Jordan Addison and pluck him from Pitt, in which those two had a dynamic relationship for sure. He is a phenomenal college receiver and a great pro prospect, and he did some great things his rookie year. And so I think that sets the stage for what USC can become down the road.
Yeah, 100%. I do love the fact that you mentioned earlier how, he used to be a running back and receiver, but we know in football, if you want to control the game, you want to, lead the team that wins, you got to be the quarterback, and I think for me, I can speak for myself when I say I wanted to be a quarterback growing up. I idolize guys like Eli Manning, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, stuff like that growing up. And I was like, I want to be just like them. But unfortunately, because of my size, I was not built to be a quarterback. But I always dreamed of being one, so I can say that. So I understand what Caleb is was referring to when he went from receiver and running back to at the quarterback position. And I love the fact that we talked about stability. I think stability when it comes to family is very important. To have the support of both parents. And the whole nail situation. And we'll get to the nail situation in a bit, right, Coach? Because a lot of people criticized him for that, but they fail to understand what you just mentioned with his mother being the nail technician that she is. Um, so we went through the high school stuff. We talked about a little bit of his time at Oklahoma, and we also dived a little bit into USC. So his Heisman season. I mean, this guy was absolutely phenomenal. The team sure didn't do so well because defensively they were hard. They were hot garbage. Let's just put that in a nice way. They were hot garbage.
Understatement.
Uh, they weren't the
Understatement.
best, Coach. I don't have the exact numbers on me, but I'm sure they were ranked in like the 80s and 90s, 70s if we're being nice in terms of total yards allowed per game for USC. But offensively, they were up phenomenal. You have Jordan Addison, who is currently one of the young, solid receivers in the NFL for the Minnesota Vikings, and him and Caleb Williams were phenomenal as Trojan teammates. But that Heisman season, Coach, what stood out to you about that year before we dive into the year
Yeah.
after?
he can improvise and scramble around, but he wants to get the throw off. He doesn't strike me as a guy that, because he has that dual threat element, that he's ever looking to run. You can almost see him taking pride in delivering the perfect throw. I'd also see as that pocket collapses, Tom Brady's greatest attribute. He stands in there, he takes a hit, and he delivers. Also, I saw a lot of dagger routes, which is like a 15 to 18 yard inside the hashes, him make a ton of those throws. Perfect ball placement when a receiver is perfectly covered and he's dropping it in that sweet spot that only the receiver can get. We like to call that throwing a guy open. He has no problem making the back shoulder throw. There's this one play that I saw against UCLA where he scrambled all the way around. He did his reverse pirouette, reminiscent of, Tony Romo. It was like the defense collapsed, and he just threw it to receiver. And the receiver just stood there, like, boom, just caught it. It was like, oh my goodness. So you like to think, right, if like someone were to take Patrick Mahomes' NFL playing style, which is like one of one, I would say that Caleb Williams at the college level almost played that Patrick Mahomes style better than Patrick Mahomes could, just because there's lesser competition and Caleb Williams is just a man among boys. And so he is, to a lot of people, defined as Patrick Mahomes 2.0. To me, I see a lot more Aaron Rodgers. I just see he's just very smooth. And I think he looks up to Aaron Rodgers. I think that's actually the guy that he loves. He says that he's chasing Tom Brady, but there are some comparisons of him being like Aaron Rodgers, where he can move around just a little bit, can throw it off platform, can throw it on the run, will deliver a throw. And so I just think overall his game, like in his senior year, he was great as well. I think that their defense just take a little bit of a step back. They didn't have as many weapons offensively, and there was just more of a spotlight on him. The thing that makes it difficult for a guy like him is that he doesn't bat an eye. And I think that the media is not used to a quarterback. And, I don't really try to bring race into it, but an African-American quarterback that is unapologetically himself and really, really articulate. Like Jameis Winston sounds like he's from the South a little bit. Lamar Jackson's from like South Florida. And Lamar Jackson doesn't wow you because he's going to like read a different defense and he's like an intellectual. Lamar Jackson's a baller. You know what I mean? Caleb Williams is very, very intelligent. But he also like had the crazy hair. He's painting the nails. You see how he dresses. He loves Drake. I mean, I'm a big fan of like Drake in The Weeknd, that OVO movement. And like Williams reminds me of like The Weeknd was like a football player. I swear.
I love that.
He's just so different. And I think that that's so dynamic because that's an expression of how we evolved as a society, and seeing kids that were influenced by culture and music and be unapologetic. He's like, I know what it's like for people in my family to make money. I'm not one of these kids that comes from nothing and I'm the breadwinner here. I expect to be here. And I love that mentality from a football player. And, I would say that the tipping point with the Caleb Williams saga, this came out, all speculation, but I'm not surprised. It was like whatever team drafts Caleb Williams, he wants equity in the team. And
I saw that.
And we'll go into that a little deeper. But his dad also saying, like, if we don't like the team that's drafting him, we'll just go back to school. Like, we don't care. Caleb Williams is living in a penthouse in Los Angeles. He's a millionaire in college. The world has never seen that before. And so he's going like, Caleb Williams is like, you didn't do the medical test at the combine. Like, why would he? He doesn't have to. Like, I love how there's like this sort of like unwritten rule of like how a prospect is supposed to act. And he's just looking at it like, I don't have to follow these rules. You think there's someone better? Go ahead, take them, because I'm going to fall into a better situation. And with that being said, the Bears literally offed a quarterback that was a top 5 pick, who is a very, very productive college player, who I absolutely believe is one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the NFL, all for Caleb Williams, which is a testament to what this guy brings to the table. Going back a little bit, though, the fact that in his mind, he's thinking about getting equity in the team that is going to draft him tells you that like this guy wants to be a billionaire. This guy is much more than a football player. And that rubs football coaches and football people the wrong way. And I say, screw them. This is the way the world is going. There's 32 billionaires in the NFL. the owners, that is, and they've been, having their cake and eating it too for years. And now you have a kid coming up that can play that game as well, and he wants to exercise the power that he knows that he has. More power to him. I think that is a fascinating dynamic, but I absolutely understand why he's going to get ridiculed. So at the end of the day, Caleb Williams has one job and one job only before we talk about, his Chicago Bears situation, and that is perform. Because if he does his thing, that will silence everybody. And I think that he is definitely in a good position to do so. And so the ball is absolutely in his court. What are your thoughts?
I love that. I think the fact that he's thinking like outside the box, he's thinking, okay, when I'm done playing, which is going to be a while from now, coach. It's going to be a while until Williams is not playing anymore in the NFL. But he's thinking like, okay, when I'm done playing, financially, I'm going to be one of the most highest paid quarterback or highest paid players to ever play the game. You talk about equity with the team. He's thinking about that in the for the future. To be honest, coach, when I first heard that, I was like, I don't want him on my team. You kidding me? Because the Giants were in contention for him. I don't want him. What kind of player asks for equity? He's a 21, 22-year-old guy already thinking about that stuff. But you talk about, it's not. That just shows that he's not just focused on football. He's focused on the other stuff that you need to think about when it comes to life. The average college athlete doesn't think about, anything outside of football. But this guy, he's preparing himself not just for this year or next year, but 5-10 years down the line. And I think that's what makes Williams stand out a lot. So, all power to him. And like you just mentioned, we'll dive into Chicago a little bit, but just to give some foresight, I do, the whole medical test stuff, I think does get blown out proportion sometimes because people are like, they see most athletes do they do the test, they do the combine and stuff. I mean, at the combine, we didn't see Caleb perform at all, if I'm not mistaken, correct, coach? At the combine, he didn't perform there.
He did nothing.
He did nothing whatsoever, and everyone was like, "Where is he?" Even at the pro day, right? He wasn't there at the pro day either. If I'm not, no, he was at the pro day. The pro day.
Oh, he did. Yep, he did.
Yeah, he did throw a little bit. So, which is fine. I think it still brings up the point that he doesn't have to do what everyone else does, because if let's say Chicago didn't choose him, he would have gone to maybe the Commanders or the Patriots, which, to be honest, aren't the best situations.
I think the Patriots aren't a bad situation, but I'll say that the elephant in the room is that Caleb Williams doesn't need football. And I think that the people in the football world have a very difficult time salvaging that. They're used to kids coming from broken families that have never sniffed out a dollar in their life. He comes from a dad who's an entrepreneur and a mom who is a working class woman. And he comes from high school where everyone goes to college. And he was worth a couple $1 million living in a penthouse before he played in the NFL. He could have easily went back to college. And he's a guy that's very articulate. And so, he's just like, screw you to the establishment. And this is the way the world is nowadays. Now, he's just smart. I just think he's a smart kid. So good, bad, or indifferent, you got to deal with it. And don't think that he's going to be the last one. However, I do think he's a unique case with his family being so stable and him being an only child. So a lot of that resonates with me. But you just got to dive deep into the family and the upbringing to understand him. And so what that tells me is that, you better believe that these athletes sniff out weak coaches. And so if an offensive coordinator wants to tell, him to change his release or to look at progression, 2 to 3 before taking off, that guy better come correct, because Caleb Williams is going to check him. The days are over of the coach do what I say. And I think that's the way things need to be, because I think that that's how we got into this generational gap, to where authority thought that the fact that they had seniority over younger people, that young people were inclined to want to listen, where it's like, no, you can't just tell me what to do. You have to tell me why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so I just think that Caleb Williams really embodies that. He's just going to be a nightmare for executives. And I believe he also put a clause in his contract where he's like, you can't franchise tag me, which again, I'm not going to be 27 years old hitting the open market for the first time, and my best football was behind me. It's like, no, I'm going to hit the open market when I want to hit the open market. And if you guys don't give me the pieces that I need to be successful, I will go somewhere else. Because we've seen so many times where a team will put like a running back on the franchise tag for 3 years. Now, like Le'Veon Bell hits the open market for the first time at 31 and he's washed. Granted, Le'Veon Bell sat out the year and like it didn't really work out too well for him. But like, it's this game of trial and error where guys have to figure out how to go about it. I always say, like in graduate school, I studied the collective bargaining agreement quite a bit. And I was like, whoa, like this is all about like labor rights. These players aren't getting treated too well. So again, kudos to Caleb Williams to having awareness to put that into his contract. And it's really just a game of like, monopoly, if you will, but really just like understanding economics and business, which he obviously has been exposed to that. And so he's just not going to fold for it. And so that's why he's polarizing, because people don't know how to react to things that they've never seen before. It's just like Deion Sanders as the coach of Colorado. It's just a lot for some people.
To sum that point up, I think Williams is a different breed, coach, not just on the field, but off the field as well. And I think that's what we should cherish about him. But before we get to Chicago, because we talked a lot about positives when it comes to Caleb, right? A lot of positive things. He's a great player. He won the Heisman. He's from a great family. Doesn't even need football in the first place. He's a super talented guy who can just make plays, wants to force the ball down the field, and get the throw off, like you mentioned. But let's be honest, coach, we got to talk about the negatives, because even the best first overall pick ever in NFL history does have his flaws. And I'm sure Williams has his flaws as well. So let's dive into that real quick. What are a few things that Chicago fans and NFL fans as a whole, including ourselves, coach, should be concerned about when it comes to Caleb Williams?
He didn't win enough. He didn't win enough in college.
But it's not his fault, though.
Well, to a certain degree, some of it is.
Yeah.
He didn't win enough. One. Two, his greatest strength is his biggest curse. And I think that he looks a little disengaged at times. He knows he has options. He's just kind of aloof. It's like, I don't know if Caleb Williams starts off the year 0-7, 0-8. He's a guy that can just say, screw it, I don't need football 2 or 3 years from now. I don't know. I like, he's gotten a lot of wealth. How motivated is he? It sounds good. It's a new obstacle. What if there is a chance, I don't see it, but he could just flame out really quickly. Also, he has a tendency to think he could do more than he can. And he might have a difficult time separating from D linemen, scrambling, holding on to it a little too long. He's not really a bad decision maker, if you will, but I think that he's not really that athletic, so that could struggle a little bit. I think he can make every throw in the book. I think that he absolutely has to be protective of the football. He's not a guy that throws a lot of interceptions. I think it's really the off-field stuff, his interactions with his teammates, and how he responds to fame. And like as the media starts attacking him as they begin struggling, how he's going to handle that. I don't really see any flaws within. Oh, I do have something that I will point out, but I don't see any flaws in his game. However, he's going to a defensive-minded coach in a franchise that historically hasn't developed quarterbacks or is known for playing good offense in a cold weather city. He's played in warm climates. Although he's a DC kid, he's played in cold climates his whole life. He's played in warm climates like for the most of his last 4 or 5 years. These things could definitely be an issue. And he's got a pretty tough division when you think about it. And so just the expectations being so high, I don't see a particularly low floor for him, though. I think that at the bare minimum, I think that he's still a competent quarterback that could be if Jameis Winston's still around getting minutes, Caleb Williams is definitely going to make a couple Pro Bowls and be here for at least 10 years, bare minimum. So it's really just about how he handles fame and the psychology of the man. But I think the arm talent, the ability to deliver throws, the confidence, it's going to be like the small things, like the leadership and how he responds to his team. And if Chicago really has the infrastructure in place, because obviously their head coach is probably going to be gone in a year or two. Like, I think that's so it's going to be on coach pretty quickly. So it's like, are they going to bring in an offensive-minded coach? And do they have the coaches that are going to gel with his personality type? So as we discussed in the past off air, how great that was for Patrick Mahomes to sit for a year and go to Andy Reid. Caleb Williams is inheriting an okay team. They've put a lot of capital into their offensive personnel and their skill players. So I think that definitely plays to his advantage. But yeah, like I said, it's those small things. And so I don't think that there's much of a floor for him. I see nothing but success in his future. It's really going to be protecting him, and how's he going to respond if they are 1-6, going into like their bye week. Those are the things that I want to see. But I just think that the only child, the gamer, the ego that he possesses, I think it's all good stuff. I really do. And if I were to say, like, 10 years ago, what is a quarterback going to look like of the future? A real spread quarterback. I think that he's like the tip of the iceberg. I think that if you were to throw in like a video game, just like certain attributes of what you want in a quarterback, I think you'd spit out Caleb Williams. I really do. I think he's the next evolution of the Patrick Mahomes archetype. And so I really do think sky's the limit. I don't have a lot to say. He just has the potential to self-destruct.
And that's a scary thing, because you talk about the off the field stuff. We've all seen the viral video of him running to his family after a loss, and he was crying and whatnot. But if you look at it from a positive standpoint, is that he cares about the game, to an extent, right? Like, sure, we say he doesn't need football, but he does love playing it, and losses do hurt him, as many players have dealt with, obviously, when they lose a game. And he is in Chicago. He's not the biggest media market compared to like a New York and stuff like that.
That's a big market, though.
Chicago, yeah. I think if I'm like, it's not as big as New York, but it is up there, of course, from a media perspective. So, great point there, Coach, as well. So yeah, I think of course, you mentioned his aggressiveness, which can hurt him at times and will hurt him at times. But hey, the same thing could be said for Mahomes, right? Mahomes is pretty aggressive too when it comes to throws, and most of the time it works out, but you're going to have those mistakes sometimes. And we shouldn't overreact when it comes to Williams when that happens at the NFL level. So other than that, Williams was a pretty solid college prospect, college athlete himself, won the Heisman in 2022 and 2023, even though things didn't work out from a record standpoint. Statistically, he was pretty phenomenal. Had 30 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, threw for over 3,600 yards for the USC Trojans in 2023.
His Heisman year, 52 total touchdowns.
That's insane. Absolutely insane. So it's like, I know there's a little drop off there between the Heisman year and the year after, but it's fine. Like, he still put up a pretty solid stat line. It's just the team, they were just bad, defensively. So
yep, for sure. But let's talk about these Bears, man.
Let's do it, Coach. Here's the thing. So me, I love talking about players they added, previous seasons records, all that stuff. So I'll make this warm up to the Williams with the Bears stuff quick. So the Bears drafted him number 1 overall, and you mentioned the pieces they added around him, which was absolutely insane. You go from DJ Moore and Cole Kmet to DJ Moore, Cole Kmet plus Keenan Allen from the Chargers, which I absolutely love the fact that they got him. Not only that, they drafted because the Bears had 2 first-round picks, for those of you who don't know, and they drafted at 9th overall Rome Odunze, one of my favorite receivers from this past year's draft.
That draft class, by the way, Malik Neighbors is really good.
Yeah,
just wanted to say that.
Let's go.
Here, I'm just saying I see a potential Odell Beckham type of production in year 1 with him.
Don't get me excited, Coach. I may be wearing the Phillies gear today, but
yep, I see a game breaker. But I do like how do you pronounce his name? The Washington cat?
Rome Odunze.
Rome Odunze
yes, sir.
Stretches the field, great at going up and high pointing the ball, winning one-on-one matchups. Really good top end speed. He's going to take the top off, opening it up for Kmet. And DJ Moore has been a 1,000-yard receiver and is still getting better. I don't know if he's played his best football. And I love the pickup of DeAndre Swift, the dual threat running back, who has been very good the last 2 years. Was a good fit for Philly. I don't know if they got the most out of him, but I think that he's going to be a safety valve for Caleb Williams. And they do have some pretty strong defensive players as well. I think that secondary has been trending up. And so, again, I've seen it, time after time in which, a team can more often than not be a quarterback away. And they were fairly competitive at the midway point. Justin Fields had just got hurt last year. So it's not even like they're terrible. They didn't get the first pick of the draft because they sucked. They got the first pick of the draft because the Panthers were foolish enough in trading all their capital for Bryce Young. So that was the Panthers pick. Let's just be clear on that with the Bears. So they're not that far away. So, if Caleb Williams won 10 games and they went to the playoffs with that offensive personnel and he was a Pro Bowler, I would absolutely not be surprised.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned last season, Chicago, they were 3-8 at one point, past the midway point of the season, and they rattled off a pretty solid 4-2 record to end the season to finish 7-10. So, not a bad record. And, many of us, the average fan, thinks, okay, so how did the Bears get the number 1 overall pick? Well, because the Panthers made a bad decision to trade up to number 1 overall the year before to get Bryce Young, who, let's be honest, hasn't looked the best, but that's a story for another day, because the focus is Caleb, of course, today. And the team around Williams, both offensively and defensively, is very solid. You mentioned the secondary. I love the addition that they added back there at safety with Kevin Byard, along with to pair alongside Jaquan Brisker, two solid safeties back there. So defensively, they're great. Offensively, the offensive line is average enough, so they'll be okay. But I'm kind of scared, Coach. I'm being honest.
That is an area for concern, and they don't have a great head coach. They don't have a head coach that makes me believe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think dude is going to be gone at the end of the year unless they make the playoffs. And so I hate when guys step into these situations, like when Baker Mayfield's with the Browns. You set this guy up to fail. Hugh Jackson or Freddie Kitchens. It's like, come on, man. You really think this guy's going to do anything with these no-name head coaches? So that's what I would like to see. Caleb Williams get paired up with a young, vibrant offensive mind down the road. I'm not even sure who the next guys are coming up the pipeline. I don't know how Eric Bieniemy never got a head coaching job. Not quite sure what's going on there. But I've seen stranger things in the National Football League. So, yeah, nonetheless, kind of wrapping things up on my end, if you have any other questions for me, is that I think that Caleb Williams ends up winning Rookie of the Year. Bearing it. I just think that the quarterback position is so dominant. I think he's a better prospect than CJ Stroud was. I think he's smarter, bigger. Arm talent, that's tough, but I think he's better than CJ Stroud. And CJ Stroud took a Texans franchise that was in flames and turned them around to where the Texans can very easily find themselves in the AFC Championship. Very easily. Given the circumstances. And so that's how quickly things can change in the NFL. And that is the value of the quarterback position. And so all things considered, I think that there's just a certain it factor, and it when you see it. And I just believe Caleb Williams has it, man. I really do. I feel strongly about him. So that's my take on him, man. And I think sky's the limit. I think we're looking at the next great one.
All right. Lincoln Riley, you hear that? Come to Chicago. You coached him in college, coach him again at the professional level. Lincoln Riley, USC may be great, but to coach your quarterback,
What about all his quarterbacks? What do you mean? He's got a ton of his guys in the NFL.
Yeah, but Caleb is a little bit more appealing. I'm just saying, Chicago's head coaching spot is should be open. By the time we're sitting here again next year.
You're right.
I'm just saying. But here's the thing. We did bring up Caleb today was as the topic for the first episode of Coach's Corner, because as we're recording this today is the first day the NFL is officially back with the preseason game between the Bears and the Houston Texans. Caleb will not be playing in today's game. However, even though I did want to see him play, that's the only reason why I would watch the Hall of Fame game, but I digress. Offensively, Coach, we know Eberflus isn't the biggest offensive mastermind back there as the head coach, but is it safe to assume that for Williams to succeed, would a spread offense fit his need? Because, let's be honest, you have three great receivers in Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze. I assume you want all those three guys on the field along with the Cole Kmet. So would a spread offense help Williams in his first year succeed and take this Chicago offense to new heights?
Oh, yeah. They're going to be in 11 personnel, which is one running back, one tight end, three receivers on the field. I would imagine 90% of the time going into the season. And I think that those guys, they have another good running back, Montgomery, I believe, correct? Or who's the
Mon-
running back?
Khalil Herbert. Yeah, Montgomery is with Detroit.
Oh,
He
Montgomery.
yeah
Yeah, he's in Detroit now. Okay, I'm sorry. I've been
yeah.
out of the football loop. I've been building
Ah,
technology the last 2 years. Okay, but believe me, I'll get up to speed quickly. I'm back in the game. But no, they're going to be in 11 personnel quite a bit. And that also presents elements of going empty because Komet can flank out wide. DeAndre Swift can win matchups in the slot. And so they're going to have this positionless feel, I feel like. They're going to look like the 49ers a little bit, moving guys around. So I think that they're going to look like a spread offense. I think Caleb Williams is a guy that's just going to make that offense look very explosive. And I think that they have the pieces to move guys around and look for matchups. So I think you're going to see a lot of different things. They have another sleeper wide receiver on the back end of their roster. I got to do my homework, but I got to tell you who that is. They have another guy that I think can get in the mix. But they have the way their roster is constructed, they can take guys that are like pretty fast. They can come in. They're going to pick up some guy middle of the season that's going to do damage. They have the structure in place where Caleb Williams can really make guys a lot better. So I feel really good about just, that offense's ability to produce. I think that they're automatically off the bat already a top 16 offense.
oof. And that's a good thing because the past 5 or 6 years, Chicago, most of the time has been like the below average offensive rankings. And
They
you
have
mentioned
3,000 yard receivers. They could have 3,000 yard receivers.
and all the power to him. So we could see Caleb be like a 4,000 yard passer in just his first
That's
season.
what I'm
If
saying. But that's not even that big of a deal, though. But again,
yeah,
how big, you know what I mean? Especially 17 games. But
yeah.
what is going to be their commitment to the run game? That is what I'm curious to see, because the run game is always a young quarterback's best friend,
hmm
especially in a cold climate.
And DeAndre Swift, as even though we do praise him as well, he's a pretty solid dual threat running back himself. He hasn't been the one that you can say, let's give him like 200 carries, 250 carries, if anything. He's just not type of back. So him and Khalil Herbert, the guy behind him, should be okay. I mean, I feel like Montgomery, if he was still with Chicago, would have been a better choice. But at the end of the day, they signed Swift to a pretty solid contract this free agency period that we just went through. So we'll see how it is. I think you brought it up earlier. Offensive line. If Chicago is in contention uh, at the midway point of the season, maybe upgrading the offensive line might be their best
Oh,
choice because,
that's going to be a priority.
yeah,
And
because
I will say this, though. I agree. As we wrap things up,
yeah, of course.
this is going to be the last Thursday up until mid-February, in which no, that was last week. So here we are. Actually, excuse me. Football will be on our television every week
Yeah.
Thursday from now until mid-February. So it's a beautiful time. There's some chaos with global affairs, and this is an election year. But football is a good breath of fresh air. This is America's
Yeah.
game, and I think that there's some great storylines. And so, for all the uncertainty in the world and in the economy, to sit back, spend some time with your friends and family, and watch some good football. And
Woohoo!
it's coming here in September, but this is the unofficial start. It all kicks off tonight, and so let's just pay our respects to this beautiful game and the fact that football is going to grace our television for the next about 5.5 months or so. Very special day.
Yes, coach. I'm super grateful. I know you are too for the game of sports and the game of football itself. And I'm super excited to just not just do this episode, but every Thursday we'll be doing this coach's corner thing. And I'm super excited to get your insight on not just from today with Caleb Williams, but other stories that develop throughout the season and some other prospects that stand out to us as well. Because we're not just gonna talk about first round picks, second round. There's gonna be some late rounders that we should keep an eye on too that you guys deserve to know. And who better than Coach Wilson here to give us the insight? Great stuff from you, Coach, as always. And for our viewers, our first-time viewers and listeners out there, where can we find you social media-wise? Even though you will be repeating that in the future, where can we find you like right now as listeners reach this point of the episode?
Antone G. Wilson on Twitter, Antone G. Wilson on YouTube, Antone G. Wilson on Instagram, and I'm on Medium as Coach Wilson. I write quite a bit, but definitely got everything hashed out to where it is just Antone G. Wilson on all platforms. So if you're looking for me, that is where you can find me. And I did just want to add, while we were talking Caleb Williams today in NFL football, I want to dive into high school football, college football, football on all levels. This isn't just an NFL talk show.
Yes, sir. Who's your college team, Coach? Real quick before we head off, who's your college team? If you had one. If not, it's okay.
I'm going to say the University of Miami, historically speaking.
Oh.
And I worked with Xavier Restrepo, the receiver who's projected to be a first 4-round pick. I think he's a remarkable kid. I think he's the second coming of Steve Smith. I also saw him as a 12-year-old at a camp down in South Florida. And then I got to work with him again as a junior in high school. He's been a phenomenal college prospect. So University of Miami, historically speaking, and then the fact that I love his game and I think he's a great kid and doing good stuff. So University of Miami is a team I'll claim to the public right now, but I don't think they're going to be particularly good this year.
We'll see, Coach. I have a good friend of mine who's also a co-host on another show that I'm a part of as well. He's a big Hurricanes fan, so we got two different.
It's all under you. My favorite football player of all time is Sean Taylor as well. So,
I
have him tattooed on my leg.
No way.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see that next time if you were on the show, Coach. But at the end of the day, I appreciate you as always. We will see you next Thursday, Coach, and we have a lot more to discuss. Enjoy tonight's game if you are watching, and for you guys as well, we hope you enjoy Coach's Corner, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Have a good one.